Thank you, Abhishek. Do join us. Firstly, I think we should all congratulate the Honorable Minister who has been in charge of the superlative campaign in Madhya Pradesh. And that was what a terrific victory that was for the BJP in Madhya Pradesh. So many congratulations.
Thank you.
It was just amazing, just amazing. And you made a very strong remark after the BJP emerged victorious. You said something which, it put the Congress into history books. Very unlike you, actually, because you're very understated. You said Digvijay Singh and Kamal Nath are now history. We must forget them and move on the path of development. and people thought, oh my God, this is a person who was described as a technocrat. But that's a very aggressive political line. So tell us the backdrop of it, this victory, and what is behind that statement of yours.
If you look at Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, these elections basically clearly demonstrated the trust that people have developed in Modi ji's governance, in his policies of empowerment, and in the way he has actually taken the benefits down to the last family, down to the last person, down to the last village. This is very different from the experience people have had over decades before, where there would be announcements at the top, but nothing actually happening on the ground. Modi ji's period, announcements followed by perfect execution, followed by measurement, followed by taking feedback. In that complete cycle, people have shown the trust.
Abhishek.
Can I continue with this political aspect for one more question?
As many as you want.
आपका एक जयपुर वाला स्पीच था बहुत फेमस हुआ था. एक चाहिए, दो चाहिए, 100 चाहिए. I think that came from the confidence that you have in the kind of work that's happening in the ministry, in terms of railway stations, tracks, etc. और अभी देख रहे थे कल पार्लियामेंट में आपका जिस तरह से आप इंटरवेंशन करके फैक्ट चेक कर रहे थे, almost like roasting those members of the opposition. So that political gravitas is coming.
I don't measure any gravitas or anything. I'm just being what I am.
I asked him about the political gravitas, the manner in which he is responding to the political opponents now.
Now let's go straight into the issue. I mean, the subject and the theme of today's deliberations, which we've had since this morning. You work very closely with the Prime Minister. You have very important economic portfolios that you have with you. We are predicted to grow between 6.65 and 8%. Last GDP Q2 growth was above 7.5%. How far can this grow? One, if the global economy begins to taper off, which it is predicted to go around 2% in some time, what will be the impact on us? Will our expectations and numbers also come down? Mr. Vaishnaw.
See, when COVID came, that period was a very difficult period. The entire world had a couple of choices to be made in how they handle the economy. We also had certain choices to be made. That was, if you ask me, that was a turning point in our economic strategy. The way our Prime Minister has managed the economy right from 2014 onwards, his focus initially was on making sure that the banking sector, the financial services sector, the overall economic structure comes to a proper shape. Because without having a strong foundation, the policies of growth, they actually require a very strong foundation. So the first 5 years were practically a period in which he laid out the foundation, cleaned up the balance sheets, cleaned up the corporate balance sheets, cleaned up the banking balance sheets, cleaned up the country's budget balance sheet, and then he started the growth journey. And that was a very major landmark thing which Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, he started. What was that? That was a decision in which he put investment as the central focus of our economic management, right? If you would have followed the budgets of the past many years, our country, our budgets used to be primarily focused on how much your revenue expenditure is, what kind of welfare schemes are coming. But if you look at 2021 budget, that budget was a landmark budget. That budget was kind of a game changer budget in which Prime Minister came out and very categorically said that we need capital investment in our country. We need to improve our productivity. We need to improve our logistics. We need to improve our infrastructure. We have to improve all the factors of growth which can lead to a continuous growth momentum for many years together. With that thought process, he increased the capital expenditure from 3.5 lakh crore to 5 lakh crore. In the subsequent budget, he increased it to 7.5 lakh crore. And in the previous budget, it was 10 lakh crore. Now, understand the importance of this. 10 lakh crore investment from the government means in the overall economy, it has an impact of 36 lakh crore. 36 lakh crore getting into the economy has a significant positive impact on the economic growth. It has also huge implication for employment. If you look at pre-COVID formal employment, it used to be about 6 lakh per month formal net job additions, net employment opportunities, formal. Informal would obviously be more. Today it is 15 lakh per month net employment opportunities. Go by the formal data. There would be many more. Actually, in our economy, it would be, I would make a guess of at least 3x more informal employment opportunities. The MSME sector, our economy's structure is like that. If 36 lakh crore goes into the overall economic activity, close to 60% of this goes into the MSME sector. So today the MSME sector is feeling healthier. Their order books are significantly better compared to the pre-COVID period. There is a very clear momentum which has got built over the last 4 years after the foundation of first 5 years. Add to that so many technological interventions and the success of our digital payment system, digital credit system, success of our Atmanirbhar Bharat concept in which so many new technological developments are happening, in which manufacturing is coming to India. Add to that so much focus on innovation. Add to that the PLI scheme. Add to that the lowering of corporate income tax. Adding all these things together, we are today, in a sense, an outlier in the global scenario. We are growing consistently at 6 to 8%. And this cycle, this investment cycle typically takes 3 years to take the first round, right? My pardon for a longish answer.
No, I'm keenly listening.
It takes about 3 years to take the complete cycle. So 2021 budget intervention is now practically showing the full results. 2023, 2022 and 2023 budgets will continue to show the results in the coming years. So we can very comfortably say now that we'll be growing at anywhere between 6.5% and 7.5%. Even though the world is tapering down, global growth is slowing down, still we are in a position where we would consistently grow at 6.5 to 8% kind of growth rate.
That's, I mean, you have absolute conviction in your numbers, and it shows, Mr. Minister. I saw a video, I don't know if you've seen it, it's gone viral, where you were trolling Raghav Chadha back. It happened, I think, in Parliament yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Was it yesterday? So, you see, have you heard about this Apple threat controversy where before the election, the opposition said that their Apple phones have been broken into by the Honorable Minister, who has gone into everybody's phone and pulled out the data, and he's the spy in chief for the government of India. It actually happened. And yesterday, I think you said something, we should all see this, where he said to Raghav Chadha on the floor of Parliament that, why don't you give me your phone? He says, aapka phone mujhe de dijiye. What else did you say after that?
No, those people don't believe in India. They don't believe in our country.
You said, give me your phone, I will get it examined. and I will get it examined by foreign companies also.
If you want, we can examine ourselves if you want foreign companies. But the good thing was, there are two members of parliament from our party, and Mr. Chadda was opposing the bill,
Yeah.
and the other gentleman, Mr. Arora from Punjab, he was supporting the bill. So they don't know what's going on in their house.
No, but you see, in the larger context of the narrative that goes, you know, majoritarian government in India trying to hack the phones of helpless opposition leaders who are pleading to the government and the government's not listening. Now, that kind of a narrative gets regurgitated in sections of the Western media. Does it matter to you?
Listen, there is a section of people who think in that way. But that's, see, the fabricated, the forced ways in which many of these people think. People have understood that negativity, people have rejected that negativity, people have understood every parliament session, just before a parliament session, they'll come up with something like this. Is that a coincidence? No, that's not a coincidence. That's a proper design. Let them do this. This has no significance. People want development. People want improvement in their lives.
Yeah.
People want a developed country. People want a change in their lives. People want better living conditions.
Surely.
People, this small section of people who were entitlement politicians, let them go, let them do what they're doing.
Now, on a more serious note, I'll follow up and then you can take off from this, Abhishek. I want to take the example of Bihar and Bengal. And the point that Mr. Mohandas Pai just made earlier today, he said, see, Arnab, the country is growing at 7.5%. Just imagine if all states were to go and double digit, we would be growing at what, 12%? And Karnataka is growing at 13%. So it's possible for India to grow at 12 to 13%. Right? So, and I heard the Prime Minister's speech this time. The Prime Minister came and for a moment he was looking upset, even during his victory speech where he said, state governments, he said, I want to warn state governments, Jo Rajya Sarkar, do not let central schemes reach the states. The people will throw you out. You notice that? Modi ji said, but if the state governments block our schemes, now in Bengal for example, in Bengal, there was the PM Kisan scheme whereby every financial aid of 6,000 rupees is allocated to small and marginal farmers, right? But the Bengal government blocked the scheme, as a result of which 7 million farmers did not get it.
Correct.
Now this kind of tension, what is the solution for it? Because we need to have a solution to it. We can't keep talking about it. The Prime Minister is right, but what's the solution to it? Because it's coming in the way of India growing in double-digit terms between some state governments and the central government.
This is a very, very important issue. And the answer to this issue will actually define our many decades. The answer to this question will actually define how fast we can become a developed nation. I'll give you the example of railways, right? There was Honorable Chief Minister of Bengal, who was the railway minister, right? And all that she did was to promise projects, to promise new trains, to promise things without actually executing or delivering them in the ground. Today, if you look at what is the allocation for West Bengal, 11,000 crore. Even when Honorable Mrs. Mamta Banerjee, Ms. Mamta Banerjee was the railway minister, even at that point of time, the allocation of budget for Bengal used to be just about 4,000, 5,000 crore. But despite herself having been the railway minister, her cooperation for railway projects is practically zero. Actually, she is opposing many railway projects. She doesn't want
Give me an example. This is a headline-making comment where you have said...
Oh, there are multiple projects I can talk about. Take the case of Nandigram project, right? The railway line to Nandigram. Now, we literally had to struggle to even take that tender out and make sure that some people participate in it. Because there would be people who would not even be allowed to participate in the project. The scenario is so
It's
bad in
dangerous.
some of
It's very
these
dangerous.
states. Some of, see, ultimately, states must understand that if they don't do justice to the people, if they don't improve the lifestyles, if they don't improve the living conditions of the people, then people are going to reject them. So this must be understood by the state governments, and that's very important for our
No, but in the PM
country's
Kisan
growth.
scheme, Abhishek, 23 lakh farmers applied for this online. 2.3 million farmers in Bengal applied for the scheme and the state government said, no, you're not going to get it. So at some point, this is a major problem for the country. And it's not just limited to Bengal.
Oh yes, it is indeed an important problem. Our Prime Minister always says, "Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas."
Yes.
And that is the spirit with which the distribution of funds, the allocation of projects, the formulation of schemes, everything is done without any, absolutely no differentiation, absolutely no discrimination.
So what's the reason? Some suspicion or political insecurity or what?
They don't want many of these governments don't want that people should improve. They want the people to remain the way. Take the case of Raebareli constituency in Uttar Pradesh. This has been the pocketbook of Congress leaders for
Yeah.
such a long period.
Yeah.
You go there and see what the condition is. Except for the last few years when development actually started there, if you go back and see the condition of the roads, the condition of electricity, the overall intent of many of the political parties was and is, to some extent even today, is that no, if people get developed, they will not vote for you. Whereas
After the recent results, won't people change that view?
I think people will have to change.
They'll have
They'll be
to change
forced
that.
to change.
They'll be forced to change
Yeah.
that view. Yeah, the country is changing.
Because people
Abhishek,
want development.
Abhishek,
People
Abhishek.
want the conditions to improve.
Right. So now I have a question which I want to preface with a fly on the wall anecdote. Minister met the Prime Minister some months back, and then he had gone to make a presentation about the number of Vande Bharat trains that are to be started. When he came out, he said, my target has doubled in that one meeting, I think, or some other number. And you were thinking, while coming out of the meeting of the Prime Minister, how to implement that with that deadline. My question is, you're saying 10 lakh crores of capital expenditure in this budget. We have the first high-speed rail in the making, about 500 kilometers. China already has about 36,000 kilometers. By when perhaps railways would have 10 lakh crores of capital expenditure, and by when perhaps we would have, like we have 50 Vande Bharat trains running, 50 or 60 now, by when we would have maybe as many high-speed rails running in India?
Absolutely. If you look at it, the importance of railways in the overall economy of the country, it's huge. Why I say that it's huge? Because if you look at the economic growth has certain factors which are necessary as inputs. One of them is logistics and the cost of logistics. If you have an economy which is 100% railway oriented, right? That economy will have just about 6 to 7% as the cost of logistics. But if you have an economy which is 100% highway or road, that economy will have 13-14% as the cost of logistics. An economy which is balanced will have good rail share and a reasonable road share. Then the cost of logistics will come down, because carrying goods by railways is always more economical compared to carrying goods by road. And then our dependence on the imported oil, that reduces significantly if you have more rail capacity. That's precisely the reason why Honorable Prime Minister, he merged the rail budget and the general budget in 2015 and 2016. And then he started allocating more funds to railways. Before 2014, the allocation for railway used to be just about 35,000 crore. Now the allocation has increased to 2,40,000 crores. And the capex that we are doing, our ability to construct the railways, so last year we added 5,200 kilometers of new tracks. That is like Switzerland is 5,000 kilometers, right? So adding one Switzerland to Indian Railways in 1 year. And this year we'll be repeating that, about 5,500 kilometers or maybe even 6,000 kilometers. So that is the pace at which we need to grow. That is the pace at which we need to add railway infrastructure. That is the pace at which we have to construct modern trains. The other day I was traveling from Delhi to Gwalior, and I asked a couple, that was a German couple, I asked them, how do you find the Vande Bharat train? And the lady answered, the trains are really good, at par with the best in the world. So I asked her, why do you say that? She said two things. First, she said, there is absolutely no jerks, absolutely no shocks, absolutely, it's very, very smooth. Second, she said, there is absolutely no noise in the train. So actually the noise level inside, the sound level inside the Vande Bharat train is 100 times less than the noise level inside an airplane. I'm talking of the airplane. We've actually measured it multiple number of times. So that's the quality of travel experience we have to give to the people. So that's the process in which, that's the pace at which we are going. And good thing is our Prime Minister is he always keeps on raising the bar, and that's what you need when you are a growing economy. You must push our teams faster, right?
Your critics also keep raising the bar. And for example, we have this gentleman called Raghuram Rajan. Raghuram Rajan is always betting against India. He's betting against anything Indian. He's the new Chidambaram.
Actually, he thinks that someday he'll become a finance minister. That's the problem.
So he says, for example, he says we only assemble phones in India. We don't make them. He was recently quoted, I don't know which scheme, he said, one key deficiency of this scheme is that the subsidy is paid for finishing the phone in India, which means assembling the phone, not in how much value is added by manufacturing the phone. Right? So he says we are an assembly plant. Q2 figures for manufacturing growth, 13.2%. Raghuram Rajan, not happy, saying we are an assembly plant country. What's your response to that? How would you counter that narrative?
Dr. Raghuram Rajan is a very well-educated person. He understands what manufacturing is. I would be surprised if he doesn't understand manufacturing. The moot question is, when somebody understands and still says what Mr. Rajan is saying, what do you conclude out of that? Plain hypocrisy, pure unadulterated hypocrisy. He knows what is manufacturing. He knows that mobile phones are manufactured here. He understands the intricacies of manufacturing. I recently visited one plant. If you look at the precision at which manufacturing is happening, they showed me a steel cube. The cube looks like a solid cube, right? I was surprised when that young engineer who was showing me, he actually pulled out one full piece out of that cube. I was like, where was the gap? Where was the place where it was cut? The precision cut inside that cube, a complete slice, is in nanometers. It's in few microns. That is the level of precision which is happening, and that precision, if that is not manufacturing, then what is manufacturing? If you go and look at the plant of any of the big automobile manufacturers, whether it is Toyota or Maruti or any one of them, there will be a long assembly line. There would be different parts which come from multiple places, and those parts would then finally be put together and you get the car out. Will you call it assembly or would you call it manufacturing? Go to the refineries, right? Would you call that processing merely or would you call it manufacturing? Question is, when a person loses the integrity, person tries to become a politician without getting into the field, playing for somebody else, hoping to become Dr. Chidambaram tomorrow, then it's a problem, it's a hypocrisy.
I love that. That's a headline. I don't know who should be worried, Raghuram Rajan or Chidambaram.
That's a good one.
You know, but you know, one area where we must compliment the government, 5G rollout, you know, it's amazing. We have a crazy, fantastic 5G rollout. You know, we're expecting to top 11% by the end of 23. That was the Ericsson Mobility Report. And then we've had the fastest rollout. You've taken it to 714 districts, 5G rollout in 714 districts. I think subscriptions are 130 million, 13 crore.
Faster than China.
Much faster than China, 13 crores of subscriptions, and it is projected by 2029 about 68 to 70% of all subscriptions in India will be 5G, and now you're moving to 6G. So this is absolutely stellar. Now, behind this, a lot of companies coming into India will take advantage of this rollout. Social media companies, big tech companies, they'll all come into India. Now, we are very worried about what happens to the data and where the servers are. I've always had this issue on this. This is the time, Mr. Vaishnaw, to set up the rules. How much control do we have on our own data? How protected is our data? The data of our people? How compliant are they with Indian laws? And what happens when the entire physical infrastructure of all the data for the largest companies in the world is not on our soil? So you see, these things, people may ignore it, but I've always believed one of the best things that was done in India was banning TikTok. Now the Americans are thinking about it, you know, so we need to think in that direction as well. And so I want to know from you, Mr. Vaishnaw, I really want to know from you, what are we doing to protect our data, get our servers here? And
So you have the art of asking multiple questions in one question. I don't know where to start and where to end, right? So let me begin where you began, right? So our 5G rollout has actually caught people's world's attention, and every report, every economic observer has termed it as the fastest rollout anywhere in the world. And very satisfying point is 80% of the equipment used in this rollout, where within 1 year and a few months, couple of months, we have already crossed 4 lakh towers, 4 lakh BTSs within just one year and 2 months. 1st October 22 is when the Honorable Prime Minister launched 5G, and we are here and sitting in the first week of December, and already more than 4 lakh sites. And 80% of this was made in India, right? All the equipment. Even more satisfying than that is that the country, our country, which was always importing telecom equipment, where we had an era which was 2G era, we all know what kind of things were done in the telecom department. That era is far behind us now. Today we have emerged as designers, manufacturers, technology developers, and today very complex telecom equipment designed in India, made in India, is exported to about 17 countries, including the United States of America and Europe. So that's a phenomenal turn in which the telecom sector has today it finds itself. The question about data, see, we are very conscious of the fact that we are an economy which has embraced technology like with open arms. We are a country which has used technology to take the benefits of service to the poorest of the poor families. We are a nation where today a credit of $10 is available to a micro entrepreneur, and there are big banks like State Bank of India and HDFC Bank vying for that $10 business exactly with the same intensity that they would be doing for a $10 million loan. That's the beauty of the way our Prime Minister has used technology in reaching out the services to the poor. That's why our thrust has been, we must balance innovation and regulation. We should not go down the way of some geographies which over-regulated technology and created a situation where innovation is killed. We decided to have absolute good conditions for our innovators, for our startups, for our entrepreneurs, and at the same time, create very strong guardrails, create very strong boundary conditions, create a legal framework in which people get the justice in terms of their right to privacy, in terms of the protection of their personal data, in terms of their ability to set the grievances in place. So that is the structure that we have created through the DPDP Act, which has already got President's assent. And I also want to, apologies, President's assent. And I also want to share with you that there are many countries which are actually saying that today India's digital bill should be treated as the template for their own countries. That's the direction in which we have moved.
So you mentioned about the 5G auctions and the process that went into its rollout, fastest rollout, but not one report anywhere of any shortcuts, hanky-panky corruption. We know what happened in 2G, 3G. How did that happen?
मोदी जी है तो मुमकिन है.
But there must have been some framework that you devised, the government devised, the Prime Minister's office designed, within which this was carried out so that nothing of that sort happens.
Absolutely transparent work, absolutely straightforward policies, clearly defined rules. All the rules apply to everybody. There is no differentiation in rules for anybody. Absolutely meticulously executed auction. I would like to put it like that.
But can you come back to my earlier question, which you sort of, how do you hold big tech to account? We're the largest market. We need to hold big tech to account, and sorry, but there's this whole freedom of expression narrative. The moment you tell them something happens in New Jersey or France, and you know the stringency of the laws that are applied as far as data protection is concerned out here, you apply it here, the same lobby turns around and says that, big tech is being disabled because government wants control over them. So my question was, when the servers aren't here, when there is constant litigation going on over the applicability of Indian laws on Indian soil, on Indians, how do we deal with this situation, Mr. Minister?
Absolutely, Indian laws apply to every company which is working in India, which is showing their, which is basically using their platforms to share information or share data or do any content in the country. Laws are applicable, laws are being implemented. What I would also like to share with you is that all across the world, there is a serious concern at the lack of accountability of the big tech and the lack of accountability of the social media. The concern is genuine, the concern is valid, because the way algorithms are built, they will basically show you something that you were searching for. And that means you are not getting complete picture. So for example, if you had a newspaper, if you read that newspaper, I read that newspaper, both of us are getting the full perspective. There is no bias, right? That newspaper is exactly similar to anybody who reads it. Then you can form your own opinion about it. Whereas in case of social media, if you want to see a particular thing, if you have a particular bent of mind, you'll continuously get that kind of feed. So in that sense, you are never getting the complete picture. Your biases are getting strengthened. So time has come when social media will have to take responsibility for what they are showing. That whole idea.
So deep fakes, for example, the Prime Minister spoke about deep fakes, and he spoke about the dangers of it. And this has national security ramifications as well.
Absolutely.
Right? What exact regulations or penalties are you planning to bring in to curb the misuse? Because big tech doesn't take responsibility for what goes on their platforms.
They'll have to take the responsibility. They cannot say that somebody has uploaded it, so it's not my responsibility. They'll have to take responsibility for it.
Will it be part of a legislation?
Absolutely. In multiple ways we are tackling it. We are tackling it through advising them. We are tackling through changing the regulations. And as and when required, we'll have a new law also if needed.
Yeah, yeah.
No, so the algorithm is the tech answer to it. But there is a political answer to it also. So for example, jurisdictions like Australia, Korea, even Canada recently, they've had those run-ins with the big tech. But there nobody says that the government is trying to control it. But here a narrative is built that the government is trying to control it. I mean, these are Western-friendly nations where their big tech has been controlled. Why should this narrative of the government trying to control be pushed rather than the fact that these are very substantial issues impacting consumption of media and that the government should be allowed to do these things?
I absolutely agree with you. This is something which concerns everybody. There is no question of government controlling it. This is important for the society. And the people who are trying to create that narrative are not doing justice to the country.
Mr. Vaishnaw, last question. I found that a beautiful picture where you were holding, I think, a semiconductor chip in your hand, or the diagram of a semiconductor chip. Next to you was the head of communications of the BJP, Mr. Anil Baluni, and you were explaining how the semiconductor works in a BJP party meeting. Am I right?
Yeah, that's correct.
You know, earlier, imagine when I was in college, all that would be discussed in a political party meeting would be caste, subcaste, jati, janjati, this, that, division, religion. I find it amazing, absolutely incredible, that a minister goes to a party meeting and is explaining to party leaders, workers, how a semiconductor works. So my question to you was that broadly, I think what's happening now, you agree that politicians like yourself, political parties are realizing if you work, if you deliver, you'll be elected. Otherwise, you can do any amount of jati, janganna politics, but it is not going to work. So I want you to just talk a little bit about that mindset जो बदला है हमारे देश में कि ये जाति जनजाति ये politics करके कुछ होने वाला नहीं है. If you can get investment, infrastructure, jobs, that's going to deliver. Because earlier I think people were doing 70% politics to 30% governance. Now people are doing 90% governance and 10% politics inside the government. Am I right? So long question again, but
I'll give you a real example.
Maybe you can end with an anecdote which explains this. Yeah.
I'll give you a real anecdote. There are many districts which are dominated by tribal societies in Madhya Pradesh. In many of those societies, many of those villages, if you go there, first time they've seen a pakka house. First time they've seen a pakka good quality road. First time they are actually witnessing tap, and they cannot believe that water can come out of a tap. And they know who is sending it, who's doing it, who's executing it. The mindset of delivery, the mindset of focusing on things which matter, the mindset of focusing on improving people's life, it's visible. That trust is visible, and the Prime Minister's focus on making sure that a path to become a developed nation, every step that is needed, everything that is needed, that should be put in place today, on a yesterday basis, on a rapid pace basis, absolutely not a single moment to sleep, not a single point to lose. That's the mindset which is coming in. That's why people trust in governance, that trust in the, I would like to say, Modi ji ki guarantee mein Bharat ko bharosa hai.
Well, Ashwini ji, I thank you very much. I think you come across very, very clear in your thoughts. And it's very interesting to see your evolution from technocrat to politician to electoral politician and everything else. So, Godspeed with all your efforts. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you for your sincerity. Thank you, sir. Thank you.